We haven't been recording yet, thank God.
Yeah, right. So I think we should begin. First of all, hi everyone. Good evening and welcome to this very interesting session on IRMAN Talks. We have been conducting these sessions for about 2 years now. Ritesh, correct me if it's more than 2 years, but it has. Okay, cool. So close to 2 years and a very interesting journey that we've had. We've had some very uh, superlative speakers, wonderful speakers with us. And today is absolutely no aberration to the entire story. Today we have someone, but before introducing that someone, I would like to introduce the other very someone who is going to be speaking to our speaker today and interacting with us. So, Pawan sir actually needs no introduction. He has been around, he's been a veteran on the campus because he does live in Anand and he's been around and interacting with all of us. So, I think all airmen starting from the 14th batch definitely know Pawan sir. And Pawan sir is with Federation, GCMMF, and he handles a lot of those products which really need a lot of care in terms of the fact that these products, although they are very standard products, and one would very conveniently want to say that these products sell by themselves, but these are the products. Just to give an analogy, I'll tell you that when I was in school, people used to tell me that the person who comes first has to really work much harder than anybody else to maintain the first position. So it may look very easy that you are managing products or a portfolio which is a very simple easygoing product, but then I think it's extremely hard. And thank you, Pawan sir, for doing this for us, because it really means a lot. Some of these products are those products which we've been eating ever since we were kids. So we have that nostalgia also around those products. So awesome, and welcome to you to this IRMAN Talks show. And I would also take this opportunity to just, before you introduce our speaker for today, I would also like to say that uh, Pratik and I have been, we joined IRMA together. We were in the same batch. And I can really easily claim that because I'm an engineer, I had absolutely nothing to do with economics. I had never studied economics earlier. So I only passed in those subjects because of Pratik. He really taught me and made me, sail through those subjects. And I still remember them. I still remember a lot of the content of those subjects because Pratik is such a wonderful friend and also an amazing speaker. So I will now pass it over to you, sir. Please introduce Pratik and take over this show for today.
Thank you so much, Ruchi. That was a generous introduction, if I may say so. And let me thank you and Ritesh, and also everyone else in the IAA who has been responsible for making this platform happen. Because I think it's an amazing platform for helping Irmans learn from each other's respective life journeys, and a platform that allows all of us to share those little nuggets of wisdom that we have acquired and crystallized in our life journeys through our life experiences across decades. So thank you so much for this. I think, Richie, this is a great initiative. And as I was mentioning earlier, just prior to when we started the session, I think this platform has now acquired a life of its own. So it's got that aura of predictability and quality about it. Every afternoon, every Saturday afternoon, I think the IRMA community looks forward to this event at 5 p.m. And it's a great platform, great event. So now you have given me possibly the easiest task in the world, introducing someone who actually needs no introduction to the IRMA community at all. A man I guess almost everyone knows, especially those who've been part of the IRMA community, IRMA campus in the last 19 years. So let's all get together, and it's my honor and privilege to introduce Mr. Pratik Modi, or should I say, Professor Pratik Modi, esteemed speaker for today afternoon. And how do I introduce him? He's a very dear friend of mine, and someone for whom I have a lot of professional respect and personal affection. So, Pratik, I can tell you one thing. If he hadn't come to IRMA, I guess IRMA might, not IRMA, but India would have been richer by a few more Olympic medals. I have,
That's
I mean, no, I'm not exaggerating at all. A lot of people will stand with me on this. There's no one who's dominated the badminton course of SAC across the last decade or so the way Pratik has. Okay, he's been absolutely dominant on the badminton court. And those who've seen him in badminton are probably not aware that he's actually a ex-professional tennis champion. Besides being a certified rock climber, and one of his passions, among his various passions, also includes trekking in the Himalayas. So when he's not doing all of this, he is also currently the director and dean of the School of Business Management at BML University, BML Munjal University. I hope I got that correct, Pratik.
Yes, correct.
So of course he continues to be a IRMA faculty. He's on loan from IRMA to BML Munjal University right now. And I think everyone knows that Pratik was an FPRM student with us, very much part of us from the year 2005 to 2009. And those of us who spent time with him on the campus then are aware of all his personal qualities. I think Richie would remember the deluge of 2005 when the campus, a large part of it went underwater.
Absolutely.
And
yeah.
A lot of people were asked to relocate. I think the mainlands, A, B, C, and D block were asked to relocate to the ETDC till the water receded, right? And Pratik was part of that group, right? So a lot of memories from that time, Pratik. Then, of course, 2009, you joined IRMA as a faculty. Well, every family has a black sheep. So some of us did cross over to the other side, right? From being a student to the faculty. But then, yes, since then, he's occupied almost every important position at IRMA, from being the I think the FPRM chair, the dean of faculty, the marketing chair. He's also been the faculty representative on the board of governors of IRMA. I believe that was 2 years. I think 2016 to 2018. And for 2 years, he actually left us in between. I think 2012 to 2014, when he became at the Portsmouth Business School. And so a very rich repertoire of international academic research and teaching experience in B schools across the world. So Pratik, we are very happy, and I think it's our, we are lucky to have you here. Those who have been through his courses that he's taught know that he teaches marketing management, of course, strategic marketing, managerial analysis and communication, something that will have, those who've been through that course with Pratik will have a lot of good memories when you go through his session today, because you might find some resonance there with what he used to teach in that course. And of course, I think for the executive program, Pratik has been taking courses on improving or making or effective decision making, right? So I can think of no other or no better person than Professor Pratik Modi in helping all of us at the IRMA alumni community improve our decision making process by being aware of the cognitive biases that are deep seated within us. And if you're aware, well, that goes a long way towards being able to overcome and effectively neutralize them. So, Pratik, I think I've taken up too much of the time in a session that I was not supposed to, but then now it's your platform. So, over to you.
Okay, thank you so very much, Pawan, Richie, Ritesh. Very, very generous introduction. I'm really flattered and to a certain extent embarrassed as well. I am sure I don't deserve this liberal praises, but I am absolutely honored really to get this opportunity to share some of the ideas related to the topic of my interest that I also deliver in executive training program for managers. With Pawan, Richie, Ritesh, I said special bond and also gratitude. Richie rightly mentioned we were together And there was also, I think we were also together in initial field work, right? We almost spent a week, and that was a very adventurous, exciting period in villages. And Pawan has been a continuous support and source of our inspiration, help as IQAC member, as member of the curriculum review committee, of which I have also been part, and been providing wonderful support and guidance to IRMA in curricular development, and otherwise working IRMA towards development. Ritesh, thank you so much for creating this platform. You've been, I think, a wonderful glue that holds and brings the IRMA community, IRMANs together. I am forever indebted to you for the help that you extended to me. Pawan mentioned that I went 2012 to 14 to the UK, and Ritesh was the first person I contacted. I didn't know, and he actually helped me find my first place where I actually landed and stayed for some time while in the Portsmouth, and also had a chance to attend the I think alumni meet he conducted in Heights. I think Heights Park. Correct, correct. So again, circling back, thank you so much, and let me start without further delay. The topic, the point that I wanted to share, certain important issues that I wanted to share related to decision making. Now, I think all of us believe that we are good decision maker, or most of us believe that we are reasonably good decision maker, and we are. I'm not contesting that we are good or bad, but I think it's important that we also, at the same time, realize that do we really know how good or bad decision maker we are, or do we really know that what are the factors that make us less effective a decision maker? What factors affect our ability to make good decision? And the bad part, or the irony, is that in most of the cases we don't get feedback in real life that whether our decision is correct or incorrect, or whether our decision could have been better or not. And hence we are not able to kind of check ourselves or learn from the benefit of the feedback loop, positive feedback loop, right? So in this kind of a situation, how do we really become a better decision maker? What are some of the enemies of good decision making processes? So first of all, let me correct this idea that human being is a rational machine, carries a big brain and is a rational machine, and can process the information correctly and can arrive at a proper decision or proper conclusion at the end of the analysis process. Now, the reason is that the brain is not developed by the mother nature to be an effective decision maker. The brain is part of our evolutionary history, our evolutionary legacy, largely aimed at ensuring the survival, right? And not to make us a perfect decision maker. Now, in the process, what has happened is that there are certain bugs, certain programming defaults which are left or left over, carried forward by us as part of our evolutionary legacy or evolutionary history, which continues to haunt, continues to make us poor decision maker without we even realizing it. Now, a lot of research which started, I think, in 1980s onwards, and then I think it caught the fancy in early 2000, in that entire decade, which has conclusively proven or identified some of the issues that humankind faces while making the decisions. And it has actually brought significant attention and awareness amongst the decision maker that what are the things that we should be knowing, we should be doing differently in order to improve the quality of decision making. And now, why it's important to make the quality of decision making better? Because we know that in the different the decision that we take has implications not as much on us but on others. So when I, as a manager, make poor quality decision, I'm unlikely to be identified or held responsible for that, because in real world there is a lot of confusion and obfuscation of the reality and the facts and the decisions that nobody can untangle or make it identify that this is the root cause of this issue is probably the bad decision making. But it has actually in reality led to a lot of disasters, plane getting crashed, and then industrial disasters, um, uh, problems in the this aerospace industries. So there are a lot of cases which I don't want to kind of get into what kind of things have happened, but I want to highlight some of the problems that have happened. some of the problems that all of us face. So in this case, I would like to highlight two types of decisions that all of us face, all of us make. Some of them are critical in nature and some of them are routine in nature. Now, as far as routine decisions are concerned, we don't have to be really worried too much about it because we know how to make decisions, how to handle it, what is the right way to make the decision, what are the variables we should really consider while making the decision. We have experience of the past, so it is rather easy. But what is most difficult is the critical decisions. Now, what are critical decisions? We don't make them every day. It's once a while, once 5 years, once a lifetime kind of decision. We don't know what factors to consider really before we make the decision. We don't know where to gather information from. So we have literally no experience of making this decision. At the top of it, the another problem is that the downside risk is very high. That means if you were to go wrong in critical decisions, the impact could be disastrous versus the routine deals. So I've kind of portrayed how both are different in terms of the large number of factors. But let us quickly move on now. The point I want to make is that it's okay that if you don't pay too much attention while making routine level decisions, but whenever you are facing critical decision scenario, then I would urge you to kindly apply some of the lessons that you probably will learn from today's session in your decision making capacity and be a better decision maker. That is the larger hope of this session. Okay, now why we make bad decisions? Okay, so there are two reasons. Now imagine the bullseye as the correct decisions or our intended goal where we want to reach. But what happens then when we are making decisions? We probably, if you see the left side circle, we are consistently hitting one part of the bullseye. Now, if you look at the consistency, we are good, but we are off the mark, right? Now, why we are off the mark? Because we think that we are actually hitting the bullseye, but we are not. So cognitive biases are those biases that influence us towards making decision with certain plus or minuses, weight added to the decision making capability. So we are not objective in the sense that we should be. The other one, the middle circle, is the noise. Now, how it is different from the first circle? And if you look at again, when we are making decisions or the decisions, large number of decisions, we intend to hit the bullseye. But none of the decision is basically hitting the bullseye, but it is scattered all over. It is different from bias because in bias, we are systematically moving into one particular direction. For example, we might be subconsciously favoring certain characteristic of individuals while doing interview, right? But that entire direction is towards one side. Whereas the noise is, it's randomness, that we probably act in a more erratic fashion and unpredictable fashion. So we kind of shoot up too much once and we too low the next time. If you look at the average, if you take the average of the entire noise, then we are probably hitting the bullseye. Okay, so average of all our decisions is correct, but otherwise they are all random. Okay, and many times what happens is that all of us suffer from both bias and noise. And as you see it in the third circle, that we are not consistent in decision making and we are biased towards certain directions. So most of our decision, if we really take care and if we really analyze, keep the record, would kind of show us as third type of decision maker. To kind of portray it in form of a graph, so zero error is the point, and the yellow line that we see is the bias, and bias can be corrected easily. However, the distribution, the pickedness is the noise, which means if I kind of tighten the distribution, it becomes less noisy a decision. So don't worry if you are not able to get it. We don't want to get into this technical side, but quickly move on to the discussion on the cognitive biases. Okay. So let's start with some of the fun quizzes to experience the biases. Okay. Now that how many triangles do you see here? Okay, and please feel free to write your questions, answers, responses into the chat box and respond to that. Just in case if you are able to kind of see triangles, how many can you count very quickly? Anyone, any participant? Okay, 8. 8 seems to be the common number, right? I've heard, when I've asked this to the student, I've heard number 1, 2 to 18. Okay. Now, someone can also argue that there are no triangles at all. There are 3 arrows and 3 Pac-Mans. Okay. I'm not saying those who are saying are wrong or incorrect. Neither the answer 0 is also incorrect. Okay. Depending on who we are and how do we analyze, we are all correct or incorrect, which means our mind often plays trick, biases the answer that we want to see, makes us see what we want to see. If you are seeing the lines and seeing 2 triangles at least, white and black, it is not because it exists. It is because our mind is fooling us. Our cognition is fooling us. It is creating this illusion. And this is the illusion we often face while making the decisions. And these are called cognitive biases. Okay. And this happens not in form of visual biases. This is a visual bias, but this happens in the form of hard decision scenario biases. We only see whatever that we want to see. So let us look at some of the other fun part which helps us experience this bias. So yeah, one is if I ask you the simple question that which of the 2 coins are biasing? Coin A tossed 5 times gives you head, tail, head, tail, head. Coin B, when you toss it, gives you tails, 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 tails. Now, which one of these 2 coin is biased? Any answer? Okay, Shubha says both. Okay. Any other answer? A, B, or both? Okay. So now again, in the interest of time, I wouldn't kind of drag it further. But the answer to this question is that B, no. That's the whole idea. That here we can't say anything. We can't conclude which of the 2 coins are biased because this is called false generalization. We often make hasty decision based on very small amount of evidences. In order to test whether a coin is biased or not, you have to toss it multiple times and then see the records in order to conclusively identify whether there is a bias or not. Any fair coin, there is fair amount of chance that you can toss it and it can give you first 5 tails and still be a fair coin. So bias which makes us conclude too fast on the basis of limited amount of evidences, and we often make hasty decision. We don't wait, we don't say this is insufficient. In fact, I do a wonderful exercise of NASA, and this is a true case of NASA. And this is where the NASA scientists also suffered this cognitive biases of law of small numbers and made a disastrous decision, and the mission suffered. Okay, so this is something which happens in everyday lives with us. Next, okay, I want you to rate yourself, okay, now on some of the questions. Don't reveal, just for yourself. Rate yourself on your looks, how handsome or beautiful you are, on ugly to attractive. Okay, just keep some kind of a number in mind, whatever you think is appropriate anchor. How honest a person you are. Again, rate yourself that you are a cheat or you are perfect honest, 1 to 10. Again, how generous an individual you are. Again, rate yourself being mean to big-hearted, right? Now, keep the number in mind, right? And now, you please ask your friend, where would they rate you? And what do you think their rating would be? Same as yours, higher than yours, or lower than yours?
Well, we hope same as ours. that's a
Yeah,
wish.
that's everyone, right, believes that probably it's going to coincide. And I'm talking about your best friends. But the research, and these are all research-based data. This is not armchair thoughts which are being displayed here. But the world over, the data and this kind of research experiment shows that invariably, barring the outliers, there is an inflation, that individual or difference of almost 15 to 20%, which is found between self-rating and rating by your best friend, which means your best friend always rates you 15 to 20% lower on all these attributes. Now, what does it indicate? It again indicates certain kind of cognitive biases, certain kind of blindness that we all carry about this influence. And that led to, I will later show you the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is a very interesting effect, a curve that shows that how do experts evolve in their career from being rookie to true expert. Again, I can't do this experiment, but normally I do this. I ask people to give instant number without actually calculating. Instant number that would be closer to the real answer. Okay. And when it is phrased like this, 1 into 2 into 3 into 4 to 9, versus the group which is given the same multiplication, but in a different into 8 into 7 into 6. And when we take the average of both the numbers, do you feel that it would be any different? Average, I'm not talking about one individual. Let's say 100 individual give the average or their prediction for the first multiplication, and 100 different individuals gives for the second one. Ideally, both of them should converge, right? But again, research shows that it doesn't. And why it doesn't? Because of what we call as the first exposure effect. Now, what is first exposure effect? That much of our decision making is influenced by the first few initial evidences of the fact and not the full length evidences of it. So what happens in this case is that when we multiply, 1 into 2, it's 2. That number, initial number is small. So we believe that this multiplication would be much smaller. And when we multiply 9 into 8, it's 72, we believe that this number will multiply into such a huge number. Now, the research shows that the difference between these two predictions on an average is not 5-10% off. It is 200 to 300% off the estimates. Right. So when you have such a this kind of a difference on the basis of the first initial exposure, which we call it anchoring effect, right? Your first few anchors decide what is it that you're going to do, what kind of decision you're going to make. So this is another kind of an issue that we face. Similarly, this quiz is also kind of used to illustrate a similar kind of anchor effect. When you give them initial anchor, for example, when I tell you that Raja Savai Singh of Amber ruled Rajasthan from 1681 to 1743 AD. Now, just because of your exposure to this question, if I ask you to guess the period birth year of Attila the Hun, just take a wild guess what it would be. Versus if I change the initial exposure, rather than this, if I give you that Gautam Buddha was born in 4th century BC. And now I ask you to guess the birth year of Attila the Hun. It's not the birth year of Attila the Hun, about which none of us are aware. But the first exposure, whether it's 4th century BC or 17th century AD, that determines where do we make the predictions. So in this case, the predictions will be closer to 17th century. In the other case, prediction will be closer to the 4th AD. So this is again a kind of a recorded evidences, right? The real answer is 4th century AD. And this is the other part. Different kind of biases that are there. Availability bias. This is, I think, the biggest bias, biggest enemy of humankind. Why? Because we do not make decisions on the basis of what is right information. We make the decision on the basis of what is available information. To tell you the fact, and again, this is experiment that in the class of MBA in Ivy League Business School, the chief human resource officers of Fortune 500 companies were asked to predict the CGPA of the students studying in Harvard and other Ivy League institutions. And what they were given in order to predict the CGPA, their academic performance in the MBA program. So in one case, they were given every student's humor score, that how funny an individual is, right? In the other group, they were given the same task of prediction. However, instead of humor score, they were actually given their GMAT score, right? What do you think the so-called top managers would have done?
Well, hopefully the GMAT score, but I have a feeling it's going to be the other way around.
So in both the cases, whether it's humor score or GMAT score, this gentlemen and ladies, they did make the prediction. None of them said that this is useless information. For example, what is useless information? Humor score is useless information. None of them kind of said that I can't make the decision because I don't have any basis to make the prediction. Instead, they did. Whereas GMAT score is a valid predictor of academic performance. So the point here is that we often, howsoever intelligent we might be, we make decisions on the basis of not what is needed to make decisions, but on the basis of what is made available to make the decisions. Now, this happens every day in our offices. If we are decision maker and some team, some executives come to us with the information, pack of presentation, and shows us the data and the conclusion, we think that this is the entire field within using which I have to make a decision, and we don't go beyond it, or we don't question that this is not sufficient for me to make the decision or get me this extra layer of data. And this is called availability bias. It's almost kind of a proverbial story where the drunken man who lost the keys is looking under the lamppost. And when asked that where did you lose the key? The person says, I lost it over there, but it's dark. And here there is a light, and hence I'm looking at it. So this is what we do. We basically try to find our lost keys, not where we lost, but where there is a light. So we call it availability bias. And we know that always, right? The world seems blue when there are first two evidences. So this is the another example. Okay, another interesting bias is confirmation bias. Okay, now what is confirmation bias? Is that human mind is designed to see, identify, filter out, and retain selective evidences that support their pre-held assumptions, beliefs, or likings. We never ever question that the evidences that I am basing my conclusion upon are invalid, because we have already filtered the other contradictory evidences out subconsciously. So this is also a very strong recorded evidence in the field of decision making, decision sciences, that every manager faces this confirmation bias. Hence, again, I would suggest that whenever making decisions, be aware of these two biases, availability bias and confirmation bias. Don't make decisions on looking at what you think is right. Always look for contradictory evidences. In fact, ask for it. So, as we often say, that there should always be someone in the team who acts as a devil's advocate. The idea of devil's advocate is to basically confront our confirmation biases. So that is another important bias. Third bias is, third name I've discussed a few more, but whatever in that number, overconfidence bias. Now, what is overconfidence? It stems from egocentrism. As we say, the center of universe is I. Okay, so center of universe is the capital I, which creates this egocentrism bias, wherein we always credit ourselves. We think that we are better than others in making decisions. We always have optimism that, for example, if I drive 1000 kilometer, I can't meet accident, others can. Okay, so this is, and again, there are a large number of experiments which have done, and people are asked whether they are going to fall ill, whether they're going to encounter certain diseases, how likely it is, what percentage that they probably ascribe to it. And always it has been found that people underestimate that bad things will happen to them compared to the rate of occurrence in the nature. Okay, so which is basically the egocentrism. We always think we are better than that, which leads to, earlier I talked about this Dunning-Kruger effect, which leads to this overconfidence. And this is the study with doctors, okay, in the US, and it is published in a very highly reputed journal, wherein they basically ask on the basis of certain facts to young doctors and seasoned doctors. And then they were asked to give the rating in terms of how confident are they about their diagnosis, the accuracy of their diagnosis. And who do you think would have given or expressed greater confidence in their diagnosis, the young doctors or more seasoned doctors? We normally find the young executives, young manager, young doctor, young professional to carry greater sense of confidence in their beliefs. This is higher than the actual accuracy, okay? So which was again 15 to 20% inflation into their own into their own diagnosis compared to the true data, okay? Which has led to this Dunning-Kruger effect, which shows that as your competence increases slightly, your confidence shoots up in the beginning. And then over a period of time, as you develop greater competence, basically you don't become more confident. As you become more competent, you become less confident into your abilities. Because then you realize the difficulty, the multidimensionality of the entire issue decision making process. So, whenever you have second thoughts or do not have full confidence in the decision making, don't take it as a negative sign. Don't hold someone who's cocksure, who has extreme confidence in his own ability into very positive light, because we often applaud people who are extremely confident, or we don't like to have people who exhibit lesser confidence into our teams. So that is not the correct thing to do. Okay, another bias is optimism bias or positivity bias. We often are optimist about future, and that is, I think, a good thing. But what it leads to is create bias, which means again a very recent and interesting paper which has come out, the exaggerated benefit of failures. Right? We always believe that people learn because of failures. People learn through their failures. And if I tell you that somebody failed, now whether someone will succeed, your okay, on an average, your estimation would be yes, right? Compared to the individual who I say that person has not failed. Will he succeed next? Right? Compared to the two individuals, someone who has failed, the evidences show is more likely to fail. Okay, so we often exaggerate the benefits of failure. The failure breeds failure. It indicates there is something inherent in a problem which has caused the failure, and as an outsider, as an observer, we believe that person would have learned from the failure. Person would have paid attention to the failure process and hence would have learned. But it doesn't happen in reality, which has led to again huge overestimation of success after failure. A very interesting paper. The title is Exaggerated Benefit of Failures. You may read it, and which leads to probably faulty policy as well. We believe that someone who has failed is going to succeed. I'm not saying that this doesn't happen. All I'm saying is that we overestimate. So don't overestimate that. False generalization bias, I've said. The other one is anchoring bias. Anchoring bias, I showed you the example that depending on your first exposure, you decide what is it that you're going to do. And mind you, that anchoring bias's effect is shown to exist when you remind them their Aadhaar card number. What is the first digit of Aadhaar card number? And then you make them, certain predictions. They will kind of move closer to Aadhaar card number or their PIN number. Okay, so it exists virtually everywhere. Stereotyping bias. We always stereotype and make forward judgment. Groupthink is another bias. We kind of like to preserve group harmony, and like to always agree with the group's opinion, even when it is absurd in many cases, which has happened. Okay, in I think MIT, they conducted this experiments wherein the group were asked to say that whether it is evening or afternoon or night time outside, wherein a few planted individuals very vehemently said that no, it's night when it was afternoon, and it kind of sways people's opinion to this level of absurdity. So when it is more nuanced, we probably can understand what can happen as a group thing, as a phenomenon. Another bias is social proof. We all seek social proof. The ratings, the reviews, what it does. If your product has a higher positive reviews, you are going to like it. And again, very interesting experiment in this field. People created absurd music. Okay, really, which is not music, which is jarring on your on your ears, and they bought ratings and put it into the list, and they looked at the performance. The initial first positive reviews and favorable comments led to this otherwise absurd music to spread and liked by others as well, compared to really good music, which was not liked initially. So the point is that social proof, if there are more people giving thumbs up, you are more likely to again give thumbs up. This is another bias. Scarcity bias. The moment you show that there is some things are in scarcity, somehow people believe that they can't live without it, and they all will rush towards it. Okay, so that is probably a reason behind those kind of marketing tactics, where only initial 5 and then there is overbooking, and then you right. So all those tactics are exploiting the scarcity bias that exists in us. Goal gradient effect. When you show that you are moving towards certain goal, we probably go out of the way to complete the remaining task. Exposure effect. We believe in something because of the exposure, familiar things. So finally, these are the biases. Again, the very conscious of the time. Very quickly, I move to the noise. These are cognitive biases. Okay, there are certain tools to check it. I will very quickly give the issues. But what is noise now? It's different from bias. So if you look at the literature in West on law, how legal judgments are delivered, and they have been analyzed in details, and it is found that entire legal and not only legal but medical as well, insurance as well, is full of noise, which means there is no consistency in the way judges deliver the sentences. Okay, it's depending on what kind of judge you get, the law applies differentially. I'm not talking about any corrupt practices. I'm just talking about the variability that exists. Similarly, insurance company, what kind of insurance adjusters and underwriters give the risk premiums? There is no consistency into that. If we, in that case, if there is a noise, how to deal with the noise? So if I ask you, who is a better decision maker, an algorithm, rule-based decision making, or a human? Okay, the best decision maker is not human, is algorithm, because algorithm removes noise. Okay, the second best decision maker is rules and models, and third best or the worst decision maker is human. And hence many time organizations also wants to automate decision making, use algorithms in decision making, because that will not have much noise. There are several insurance auditing noise audits which have done. Medical diagnosis, again, I've told you. Interview, again, very interestingly, all of us work in corporate, in organizations, and we are part of some interview. And most of us take what we call as unstructured interviews. And do you know that the scientific studies have tried to find predictive validity of the interviews with the actual performance of the candidate, and the correlation is merely 0.2. It's very poor, 0.2. So your interview selection process predictions doesn't correlate with the actual job performances, which means there is a lot of noise in the interview. Because what kind of questions do we ask in the interview often? Okay, what kind of questions do we ask in the interview? Unstructured questions, right? So for example, we all interpret. There are 5 panel members. We all interpret. Tell me about yourself differentially. The other question that we normally ask, and this is science behind it: what would you do if you encounter a difficult team member? hypothetical question. We all interpret it differently. Then we ask questions opinion based, right? What do you think your biggest strength and weaknesses are? Right? We know that this kind of questions will be masked, and they are not related to the actual job performance and have no predictive validity at all. So the point is that even the field of interview is filled with this noise, bad decision making, and we always at the end of the interview carry this kind of a belief and a pat on our back that we have found a gem, right? It's not more than 0.2 kind of a correlation that is found. So what to do basically, very quickly, and to end with, first of all, Galton, the distant cousin of Darwin, okay, he did this interesting experiment at the village fair. He would keep a bull and would invite all the villagers to guess the true weight of the bull. And while everyone was off the true weight of the bull by a huge margin, but when he averaged it out, he found the real weight to be so close, less than 0.5% of error. And this was replicated across large number of studies. And hence they found this phrase, wisdom of crowd effect, which means a decision or large number of people's decision when averaged is much more sound than probably decision made by an individual. So always seek input, help, comments, criticism from others while you're making decisions. Believe in the wisdom of crowd. If others are not available, what to do? Believe in yourself. That means ask yourself the same question twice. If you have made a decision, pause for a while, ask yourself after some time the same question, and then see whether the decision coincides or there's a difference. That is called crowd within. Avoid instant decisions. Okay, delay the decision making. So that allows certain biases, noise to kind of get checked. Make decisions using deduction rather than induction. The biggest enemy of poor decision making is the induction decision making, which means we always pick up evidences and try to generalize. So that is not the correct way. Look at the general principles that govern the world or govern the society, and then kind of bringing down towards specific cases. And finally, to end with, how do you judge the quality of good decision making? Never ever judge the quality of decision making by its outcome. That you made a decision, it turned out to be good, you are a good decision maker. You made a decision, it turned out to be bad, poor, doesn't mean you are a bad decision maker. How do you judge the quality of a decision making? Never ever by the outcome. Because as this metric shows, that you decide to drink and drive. Okay, you may meet the crash, it's not good decision. You may meet the crash, again it's not good decision. Okay, so the idea is that the quality of decision making can only be judged by the process of decision making, by auditing the process, how you made the decision, and not the outcome. Because between the decision making and the actual outcome, there is black box, there's a lot of things which are not within your control, that may happen, that may have certain consequences. So you can't really judge a good decision maker by looking at the outcome of the decision making process. So keep always this in mind when you are making this decisions, and probably you will be a better decision maker. With that, I would kind of end my talk here and would invite questions, interactions, comments, please. Thank you.
Well, thank you, Pratik. Thank you so much. I think this was not only very insightful, but also very relatable, because almost everyone has been in the situation that you described. And I'm sure all of us can relate to this. And I think it's very relevant as well. So those who have questions, like Pratik said, please put them in the chat box, or you can just now, directly ask them in the group as well. In the meantime, I have a question, Pratik. So maybe while people are gathering their thoughts and putting them together, I have a question. Okay, so yes, we've understood that there are a lot of bumps on the road as far as getting the perfect decision. And I get your point about sticking to a process. So between the problem statement and the final outcome, there has to be a specific process, which, like you so beautifully mentioned, that there has to be an algorithm in place, because an algorithm is more likely to shut out the noise. It is more likely to be free of biases and be able to reach the most likely or the most correct outcome. Now, to a young IRMAn or even to experienced IRMANs like us, what would be your practical advice in terms of day-to-day work environment? How do we block out the noise? How do we neutralize the biases? So yeah, I mean, it's good to have a process, but then in a practical work environment, in practical life, what are the few simple rules that we can follow?
Okay, very, very good question. And I think the entire decision science is trying to find answer to that. Some of the things which are known, first of all, we all should be reflective. Reflective in a sense that we should always be self-aware of what is it that we are doing. And this is very difficult. We all know, right? It requires a lot of wisdom evolution before we become a reflective individual. So if you are not reflective, we are not going to uh, counter ourselves. Such as, for example, we are going to fall prey to confirmation bias, availability bias. So develop the ability to self-respect, value the opposite voices in the team. In fact, you should look for devil's advocates as much as possible. They are not your enemies. The member who does not agree with you, your analysis, your input is not it's not your enemy. It's in fact a big friend. The other one is to have good understanding of statistical facts, which means knowing the base rate of success or failure in a particular field where we are making decisions, right? If we don't know the base rate, for example, a lot of us are scared, right? Or are very, very scared of flying, taking flights. And we are not as much scared while driving vehicle ourselves on road 1,000 kilometers. Now, if you really know the base rate, statistical rate, we probably find that you have no reason to be scared of flying because that is the safest mode of transportation. Whereas road is the unsafest, most dangerous form of commute, of travel, where we should be. So knowing base rate help us counter some of the biases. The other one is knowing the criteria. Having the criteria, many times what happens is that whenever we are making decisions, we don't know what are the criteria, we don't kind of verbalize the criteria, or we don't set the criteria clearly and then make the decision process. We kind of keep on changing the criteria as we kind of evaluate or come across newer solutions. So ex ante, I think you must set criteria that in this situation, what are my constraints and what are my criteria? And after that, you start and you don't change it. After that, you probably start considering making the decision process. And that's what actually algorithm does. What does algorithm do? Algorithm is designed keeping certain objective functions, right? Which is criteria set given to that. It is given the problem statement. And then probably it works avoiding the biases, avoiding the noise towards the goal function and gives you a proper, more reasonable, accurate answer. So if we are reflective and more human in approach, better team player, respectful of others, and know what is it that we are wanting and don't keep on shifting or changing our mind, probably it helps in becoming a better decision maker.
That is all of us to take back from the session. One more thing, I mean, I was very curious because I understand that biases are things that really impact our decision making. At the same time, we also know that they, in cognitive terms, they also have a certain value in life because they are essentially coping mechanisms that have been put in place, okay, given to us by Mother Nature to be able to, what should I say, cope with the various situations in life that we find ourselves in. For example, availability mechanism, availability bias. A very classic example, because availability bias, many a times there is a time constraint and we do not have all the required information available, and yet we need to go back to the templates and the paradigms that we have in mind to be able to draw on the experience to be able to make a decision. So yes,
Yes.
I think that point I just wanted to highlight, that
Absolutely.
even though biases are something which have been given to us to
Right.
be able to cope with the complexities of life.
Right.
Would you agree with that?
Yeah, no, absolutely valid point. And I'm sorry that I should have actually also mentioned that when I say bias, I'm not kind of saying that all of them are bad. The biases also exist. They have some value for us as humans. In fact, I would strongly recommend a wonderful book, Thinking Fast and Slow by Kahneman, wherein he describes the purposes of this biases and how they are helpful in routine decision making. So that's why I kind of discriminated between routine decision making versus critical decision making. What biases does, or this heuristics we call them, availability and confirmation and overconfidence, they make decision making very easy. So whenever we are encountering a routine decision processes, we don't have to expend energy in processing the information, which consumes a lot of glucose. We know that the biggest organ that consumes maximum glucose of the body is our brain. So it is taxing actually on the brain to analyze anything with a lot of care and rational analysis. So heuristics is a nature's way to reduce the load on the brain so it doesn't get heated up and allows us to exit. For example, the moment you have a red color in front of you, you tend to run, right? Flight. So it helps survival as well. You don't have to think, spend time. So they are a shorthand for making routine decisions. Only thing is that we got to be careful and ask ourselves, am I making critical decision? That's where you got to slow down. Okay. Slow down to the extent that you kind of try and check all this possibility of biases and noise affecting your decision making so that you don't go wrong. But otherwise, on a routine decisions, don't worry. It's tried and tested. We have survived millennia. So our brain and biases are not there to kill us, actually.
Yes, Richie has a couple of questions before I
Yes.
get to her, because she can ask the question herself.
Yes.
Subhash has one, and
Uh-huh.
he's taking the decision absolutely cutting edge, bringing
Yeah.
into the mix. So his question, and I'll just ask on his behalf, just
Yes.
speak it out on his behalf. Can AI assistance reduce noise and human biases in future as it
Yeah.
runs with algorithms and larger data? A very interesting question.
Yes, very, very interesting. And I think the world is actually moving towards that. If you look at it, much of the decision making is now autonomous. So much so that even the cars are being driven in autonomous mode. And that's the future of the transportation, right? In fact, the biggest bet of Tesla is not the passenger vehicle, but the commercial vehicles, where it is costly to have drivers and you don't find them in large fleet of trucks. So much of the decision making, not only in driving sense, but even in the managerial decision making is now getting automated. And the effectiveness is increasing. And AI has started to beat human at the ability to make decisions now. So the generative AI models now, when it moves to the level of general intelligence, they will become much smarter than human brain, in fact. And the only limitation is that the AI based, that means the programmed or algorithm based decision making, can be as good as the training data set that is provided, or the amount quantity of the training data set. If there are biases in the training data set, what do you do? Okay, so, and these are not consciously kind of poured into that, but because of your data set itself contains biases, they also are picked up by the AI system and is going to propagate and continue this biases. So we have to be very much conscious of one, expanding the database for the training, as well as identifying these biases and removing from the training database and make it more neutral and balanced. Yeah, so these are the two points of the answer for this. Yeah.
I hope Subhash that kind of answered what you were trying to ask. Now, Abhishek has a very interesting angle. He goes back to the point that you made earlier, about the practical aspects of what we need to do to improve the process. So his take is emotional intelligence helping in decision making, or is it just a noise?
Well, I see emotional intelligence helps in a way that it allows us greater control over our emotions, which means the way we think, okay, the way we approach, the way we react. And when we are not reactive and when we are very much in control of our emotions, we are likely to make cold, rational, analytical decisions. Otherwise, we are likely to react, and all the reactions are coming from the nature designed fight or flight mode, right? Which are meant for survival. So, whenever we feel threatened, attacked, not physically, but even in a meeting, our natural reaction is fight or flight, which is always full of biases and noise. So, I think I would agree with that statement. Yes, that emotionally intelligent people are relatively better decision maker, but that's not the only ingredient. That's the point I want to highlight.
Right. I think Abhishek, that kind of covered that. Now, Richie, of course, has been waiting for her turn to ask
Yes.
a couple of questions. She already put them in the chat box. So, Richie,
Yeah.
you are here. So, why don't you ask them yourself?
Thank you. So, actually, that was a leading answer which you gave, Pratik, because
Yeah.
I would say that when we are having biases or we are making decisions emotionally, because, in various settings, whether it is personal or professional, when we feel that we are being attacked or there is some kind of a danger that we perceive,
Yes.
how do we, I think the biggest takeaway from this session I want to have is, how can I improve upon something like this where I can differentiate? How can I get that? Because I don't want to really today, even today, I don't want to base my decisions on AI. I want to have
Yeah.
a decision which I really, it is kind of foolproof. And tomorrow I don't feel sad. Yeah, I should have thought 2 minutes before making that decision. So is there a
Absolutely.
mechanism where I can be more aware, where I can think carefully and clarify to myself? I don't need to go out somewhere that this is only a perception, it may not be true or something. Is there some solution to this
Yeah.
randomness in our lives?
Yes, yes. No, it's excellent question, and I think the answer is that yes, some of the points that I mentioned, we all should develop the habit of delaying making of the decision, not forming instant impressions when we are making critical decisions. Okay, so don't make decision on the basis of the first few facts. That is false generalization that happens. Don't make decisions, sleep over it, as they often people say, right? Sleep over your decisions, and that's, I think, a valid advice. That when you sleep over it, you are likely to benefit from more balanced state of mind that allows you to reevaluate the same facts in a different light and make a better decision. So that is important. Another point is always ask yourself, whenever you're making this, what are my criteria? What is it that I want to achieve in this decision ultimately? So many times we are not aware. For example, I always ask students that what made you decide take admission to IRMA? Now, if this question, if you ask them on 3 different occasions, their answers would be different, which means their criteria were not clear. So that means if you're making as example, choosing your MBA college, and you don't know what it is that drove you or helped you analyze the situation and then take a final call, which means you're not probably thought in a structured way. So there are structured decision making approach. Often for in the HR context, they're called mediating assessment protocols, which breaks the complex decision into simple dimensions and then ask you to gather information, wait, analyze, have David's advocate approach, and then make decision. One very important thing that I would like to share in response to this question is that we often look at problem and we look at solution. Now, this is, I think, very wrong way of making a decisions. What happens when you identify problem and a cause, and then you ignore the second round effect of the solution that you have proposed? That means problem, solution, and you end it there, then you think this is the right solution for me. No, but you have to also think that what is going to be the second round implications or higher order implications of the solutions that I found or the decision that I'm making. Is it acceptable to me? And most of the people don't look at the higher order, second order implications of the decision that they're making. So always keep this in mind, that what is going to be the second order implication, so that you don't get into trouble.
Wow,
So
this
these are some of the,
I think
yeah.
very helpful. Thank you. I think it answers both my questions. Thank you.
I think one critical takeaway, Pratik, was that when it comes to, high stakes decision, or what you call critical decisions, as you
Yes.
put it,
Yes.
where the risk factor is also very high, we need to be way more careful. And therein we need to apply a lot of these processes that you have mentioned in this excellent session. I think all of us are richer by the end of it in terms of the insights that we gained, in terms of these little nuggets of wisdom that we gained during the last 1 hour or so. Richie, I think this is time to, for you to thank our esteemed speaker for the time that he's spent with us and for, sharing his knowledge with us. And so over to you.
Thank you to Pawan sir. He has made my job easier. And I am more than this formal thank you. I am very, very happy and grateful that both of you could take out time and be with us today evening. Because I think for me, this interaction with seniors, peers, and the younger ones as well really brings in a lot of cross learning, which is extremely helpful because we live in a social setting. We don't live alone. And it's interesting to know things, learn things from your experience. So thank you on behalf of IAA and of course from my end as well. Thank you both of you, and thank you to all our listeners and viewers. Thank you for joining us today. And we will be soon back with the next episode, next session, next interaction. I really urge you all to keep joining in and motivating us, because I think the objective for all of us is the same, to know each other and be with each other as we all are IRMANs together. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Thank you. And have a great weekend. Bye bye. Take
Thank
care.
you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye. Bye.